Hello and welcome to Fly Nubian Queen TV. I'm Stephanie Rivers, aka Auntie. Come on in and sit down, kings and queens. We want to welcome you to the conversation. If this is your first time at Fly Nubian Queen TV and you want to be notified when we post new videos, then text Queens to 31996. And if you're not new to the conversation, we want to welcome you back. Today's conversation is about white people and random acts of kindness. I've been reading a lot of news reports about white people, random white people, giving money and giving compliments and giving words of support to black people in America that they either know or meet on the street, especially after viewing the video of the modern day lynching of George Floyd, as well as other videos that are out there. The news about Breonna Taylor in Louisville and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, and other videos coming to light in the past couple of months. White people are putting money in people's cash apps. They are handing them bigger tips than usual. They're giving compliments. And I've too experienced that. I didn't realize it was something that everybody else was experiencing until I read it. As a matter of fact, only a few days after the modern day lynching of George Floyd's video surfaced, I was working, I'm a flight attendant, I was working a flight, and one of the first class passengers offered me a $20 tip. So I said to him, because I've been offered tips before, but I said, no, that's okay. And I then thought to myself, $20, that's what George Floyd's issue was about, that they claimed that he was trying to use a fake $20 bill. Then I got to thinking, is this a fake $20 bill? Is he trying to set me up? Is that how George Floyd got caught up? Somebody passed him a $20 bill and it was fake. And so, you start thinking of all these things, and then, life went on and I forgot about it until I most recently read the articles. And so I would say, if you are trying to figure out, as a black person in America, how do you handle white people's random acts of kindness, as well as their thoughts of, or their talk of, what can I do to help? You might have had that happen. I would say, if they want to be helpful, the best thing that they could do is to let their Congress people, their representatives in Congress, know that they support reparations for ADOS, African descendants of slaves. And not that it starts and ends there, but it certainly starts there. That's a debt that ADOS are owed. In addition to other things. So that would be a good start. Let them know that you support the legislation that would lead to reparations for African descendants of slaves. And of course, that bill is going to be in the trillions, but you pay all these other people when you decide that they deserve money. And so we certainly are first in line, and we need for you to write the check, white people. So that would be the first thing. Everybody has a role to play in our agenda and our struggle for acknowledgement and better treatment and a better world. And so one of the things that a lot of people are talking about now is they're calling it defunding the police, and essentially that doesn't mean zero out the budget for what we as tax-paying Americans offer to our local and statewide law enforcement. But it just means to redirect the funds and use those funds in a better way that serves our communities. So that's what it means, the whole defund the police. I guess maybe for marketing purposes, it might get attention, it might sound better, it might be a better way to do a sound bite. But one of the reasons that it is even something that has been brought up is because you've seen the videos, of course, George Floyd's murder video, and then you've seen the videos of how police have been treating protesters as well. And so in that, there is recent news, and I'll put the link down for you to check it out. Representative Bobby Rush in Chicago said that his office was looted during the protests a week or so after the George Floyd video became public. His office area, where his office is, it was looted. And instead of, he has a security measures whereby one of the things he uses for security is he has a video tape running of his office, and he caught on video about 13 Chicago police officers milling around in his office, not for 5 minutes, not for 15 minutes, but for about 4 hours. 4 hours they were in his office hanging out when they were supposed to be outside monitoring protests and keeping the peace and protecting property and the people who live in that area. They were in his office. He says he has videotape of them, and they also showed snapshots from the video of police officers taking a nap while they were supposed to be working, of police officers popping popcorn and drinking coffee and just generally on break for 4 hours when they were supposed to be downstairs. So essentially, that's stealing. That's stealing from the taxpayers that pay your salary. So that's why we know there are some good cops, the ones that were downstairs doing what they were supposed to do, out in society doing what they're supposed to do, treating people with dignity and respect as they're doing their jobs. But then there's also the liars, the bullies, the killers, and the cheaters that are out here harming people on the regular because they know they can get away with it. And then you've got the blue wall of silence, police officers who look the other way and take up for and block us from prosecuting those bullies, liars, killers, and cheaters. So essentially, that's why, another reason why, a most recent example of why we need to redirect our funds. We should not be forced to pay for people to bully, lie on us, kill us, and cheat us out of our money. We need to redirect our funds and have more community police officers. So that's one of the things that one of the programs that if you have a white friend and they want to know, what can I do? $3 or $4 or $300 or $400 is not going to get it done. We need legislation and we need reparations. And going back to legislation, you see, some of us, as I've said before, they're killing us in different ways. They kill us on the side of the street when they think nobody is looking or nobody cares. Then when you try to bring justice to the family members, then we are killed psychologically because then we don't get justice in the court system. And then here's another way they kill us. They kill us with the pen and the legislation that is written against us. And so that's another thing that we need to work on, is just because there's a law, there's two terms that I often use. One is de juris. De juris law is essentially how the law is written, the written version of the law. And then the other term is de facto. De facto is how the law is carried out. And so let me say before I go on, I'm not an attorney and I don't have a law degree, but I do read a lot, and I do know that even in instances where there's a law de jure that's written in on behalf of black people in America or just people in general, there's also a de facto law and how it is played out, how it is used. And most of the time, what's intended, the written law is rarely, if ever, is used in our favor. And so I read things like Talking to Strangers. I talked to you about that and how it went over a lot of things, but how police engage people in traffic stops. There's a book called White Rage, and that talked about how there are lots from Reconstruction on to present day. There are lots of laws that are put in place that are supposed to be for the people, by the people, and work on our behalf. But when it's put into action, if somebody the person in charge of the law doesn't want it to work in your favor, they're going to find a way around that law to make it work against you. And that's what's happening to black people in America. Things are supposed to be written to help us along, help people in general along, help black people, African descendants of slaves, to help us erase or to have a leg up, to help us to get through the discrimination, through the brutality, through slavery, through miseducation, all these things that we have been held victim, we have been victimized by. But if the person who is in charge of the law doesn't want to abide by the law, we know of so many times where they get away with it. And what's the point in having a law? What's the use in having a police force if they don't abide by the law and they're not held accountable when they don't abide by the law? So I think one of the things that we need in America is everybody should have a minimal proficiency of knowledge about the legal system, because so many times the legal system is not used in your favor, and it's supposed to be. But if you don't know that you have certain rights as an American citizen, then you don't know that you should do something in particular, or you don't know that you should shy away from doing something in particular because your rights protect you in that instance. And so nobody on the side of the street is who's trying to brutalize you and bully you and maybe do a search of your vehicle when they stop you and they're supposed to have a search warrant, but they don't tell you that you can deny them searching your vehicle. You think you don't have a right to say no. So you say, okay, and then they end up filing charges against you for something that had you said, no, you cannot search my car without a search warrant, then it would have ended there, or at least you would have known your rights as an American citizen. So having the basic proficiency of the law is, I think, important as having a biology class in college or in school. And so that being said, the good news of what has come about in legislation in the past couple of days is there in Kentucky, there's now the Breonna's Law. The Louisville Municipal City Council, I think that's the official name of it, they voted down no-knock warrants in that jurisdiction. And so they say, and I agree, it is a step in the right direction, no-knock warrants. In fact, if you know the story of Breonna Taylor's death, a no-knock warrant is what led the police to break into her home in the middle of the night, and while her boyfriend was trying to protect them, not knowing that it was a police raid, he started shooting at them because he was standing his ground. That's another law that mostly works not in our favor, but against us. But he knew his rights as a licensed gun owner, and he started shooting to protect himself and his family, Breonna, and their household. And so essentially, when the police, Louisville police, broke in, they had a no-knock warrant. Well, they ended up killing her and over trying to look for somebody who had already been arrested earlier that night. So essentially, the city council has now banned no-knock warrants in that jurisdiction. But here's the thing. Every state in the United States has a no-knock warrant clause in their legislation, except for two states. The state of Oregon has a ban against no-knock warrants, and the state of Florida has a Supreme Court decision banning no-knock warrants in Florida. Every other state has one. So make it your business to find out, how do you get no-knock warrants banned in your state? Because here's what happens. A police officer can decide whether or not they want to use a no-knock warrant to come into your home and for whatever reason they claim they need to, or they can decide to just wait till you walk outside and arrest you, or wait till you're at a restaurant or in a mall and arrest you. And it's what I found is certain people, they give the luxury of letting them just walk outside, or calling them and saying, hey, we got a warrant for your arrest, we need you to come down. And they give that luxury to certain people. Other people, they have total disregard for your life, everybody in your household, your neighbors. They just burst in the middle of the night, guns blazing. And so it really depends on the police officer. Here we go back to them. It really depends on the police officer and how he wants to pursue the case, whether or not he feels like a no-knock warrant is justified. Now, of course, he has to have a judge to sign that. And in the case of Breonna Taylor's case, I think the judge, I wrote down her name, Judge Mary Shaw. Judge Mary Shaw in the 30th Judicial District in Kentucky. She was the judge who signed the no-knock warrant, so those rogue, bully, liar, killer police officers could use that no-knock warrant to go into Breonna Taylor's home looking for somebody else who didn't even live there and ended up killing her. So Judge Mary Shaw, if you know anybody who lives in Louisville, Kentucky, in that area, Judge Mary Shaw is going to be up for re-election in 2023. So we need if you live in that area, you know anybody who lives in that area, go and vote against Judge Mary Shaw, because this is not the first time that Judge Mary Shaw has been involved in a questionable decision about her and her writing, putting her signature on legislation or a warrant, or questionable choices that this judge has made. And she has run uncontested for a couple of times, but we're going to make sure somebody is running against Judge Mary Shaw in the 30th District of Kentucky the next time, okay? And so it's good that the Louisville City Council has made that choice to ban no-knock warrants, but we want to get it banned all over the country. So make sure you find out how you can get that done in your state or in your county. And so also, what I find was was interesting is that Senator Rand Paul, he's one of the senators that represents Kentucky. He has now said that he wants to file legislation that ends no-knock warrants across the country. he says, okay, I see that this is not something that should be happening. He said he spoke with Breonna Taylor's parents or her family, and he wants to be the person to stand up in Congress and say no more no-knock warrants across the United States. But here's what, when Rand Paul had an opportunity to help make the lynching a federal hate crime, he was the lone senator in Congress to vote against making lynching a federal hate crime. And this was just a few days ago. So now all of a sudden you want to be somebody's hero and put forth legislation. Why don't we start with the one that you already said that no to, and you go ahead and make that right before we move on? Because I'm not sure, haven't figured out why it is that Rand Paul would want to put his name on one thing but be voting against the other thing. Because clearly people are being, hate crimes are an issue in today's society, and it seems like that would be a better way for him to exercise his support for Black and brown people in America who are the victims of hate crimes every day. So that being said, I think it's important for us to know our roles in this fight. If you are a protester, that's great. If you are a blogger or you're a columnist and you want to keep people informed and let them know what's going on and how they can better the choices and things that are out there that need to be addressed, that's great. If you are a lawmaker, if you are an attorney, we need everybody in this fight for justice in America, for ADOS, African descendants of slaves, and of course for other people, but it's B1, it's Black first, and we gotta take care of our own family first before we worry about everybody else, because they don't worry about us. They don't, So we need to make sure we're taking care of each other, and making sure that Black people in America are fighting for what we deserve and what is owed, and that is reparations. And then and I always like to put 911. There needs to be a federal law or state law against making erroneous, bogus 911 calls. Also, and we need federal land. We need land set aside for us to have our own programs so we can educate our own children, and we need some healthcare programs to address issues that affect us personally. And so everybody again has a role to play, and defunding the police or redirecting the funds for law enforcement, however you want to say it, that also needs to be a part of the package that we get, along with the trillions of dollars for reparations. So that's it for now. Make sure you start looking into your state to find out what you can do to end no-knock warrants in your area. And whatever you do, keep the good fight and keep shining the light in the darkness, and we'll talk to you the next time. Thank you, kings and queens. You've been watching Fly Nubian Queen TV. I'm Stephanie Rivers.